All right, so this is Group 2's library cataloging issue presentation, and our research question was, how can the organization and cataloging within our libraries make our patrons more self-sufficient and independent in finding the resources they need and want? So each of us did a little bit of research in this topic. I looked at how to Ferberize data and how to actually open up catalogs and make data more public and flexible, allow users to actually find the information they need and want within one place on a catalog.
And I looked at curriculum enhanced MARC cataloging and how teacher librarians and library media specialists can do educational additions to the MARC records.
I looked at an article that described how Novelist uses appeal factors in their book records to assist in reader's advisory, and then talk about how we could take advantage of that.
My article focused on questions that needed to be asked before considering a change to the organization of a library. The author then went over some changes that are being made at the current time, one of them being with the librarian Sue Gifford's school in New York City. We had the pleasure of meeting with Wednesday night.
And I got a chance to take a look at what libraries can learn from other libraries and even bookstores to help our patrons browse more efficiently and find what they're looking for within the library itself.
All right, so to start with my research, I read an article that actually did some research in a project, and it took place in Norway, and they looked at sort of the weaknesses that exist in catalogs right now, and pretty much they found that library catalogs technology, patrons like them, they don't meet patron needs. The user experience is really not that pleasurable. Users can't ask specific questions, the content's not relevant, the interface isn't really clean, and both a library website and catalog site are two completely different sites which users don't tend to like. And what they found is users really want a site more like Amazon when they're looking for a book at the library. So this project was called the Toad Project, and it took place in Oslo, Norway, and their goal was to use library metadata to figure out how to provide a better catalog experience to users. And they used FRBR, or the Functional Requirements for Bibliographic Records, and linked data to do this. So Ferberized data pretty much just means that there's lots and lots of connections. They're connecting a work with an expression, with a manifestation, and they're sort of looking at items not just within a library but outside of a library as well, and how those connections exist around the world. A couple things they did within their catalog system to show all these connections is they tested out something called a trip planner. So within a catalog, let's say you were traveling to Spain, instead of just bringing up guidebooks about Spain, you'd get cookbooks and language books and literature books and movies and textbooks. So instead of just searching a catalog and finding a specific guidebook, you'd find all different things that might help you on your trip. They also tested out using Last.fm within the library catalog system. So if you were looking for a specific piece of music, it would also direct you to the Last.fm site, and it sort of combined data from this external site within the library catalog, and it would help you find similar artists, albums, biographies, tracks. You could actually listen to music within the catalog system, and users really, really liked this function. So it's the idea of using linked data within the library catalog, finding tons and tons and tons of different connections and bringing them all right to a user in a catalog, a library catalog system. So what they found in this project was that the more interaction between internal and external data, stuff within the library and outside the library, users really enjoyed this. It increased library lending and circulation. But they also found that having too much information in a catalog is not good. People were overwhelmed, so it was more important to find targeted information. Also, they found that to make libraries more user-friendly, we need to open up our catalogs to provide lots of bibliographic data to users. Also using lots of metadata that's open and flexible, so other external sources can actually use the library's catalog data so that they work together to share data. And also creating a national authority that's open to everyone, so everyone can access this data. The biggest thing they talked about is how MARC is a huge obstacle. People don't like it, and it doesn't make catalogs very user-friendly, so they considered getting rid of this, and also converting entire catalogs to the RDF format, as well as ferberizing all of the data, and pretty much just making our library catalog open and accessible to everyone, so other people can actually build services upon the library catalog, and then that would improve user experience. So the biggest conclusion was open up the catalog to as many people as possible.
Thank you. And my research was on curriculum-enhanced MARC records, providing standards-based curriculum cataloging that allows library media specialists in the school to attach standards to the MARC records. It was developed under Caroline Karras, and it appears online in the Knowledge Quest web. And by adding curriculum-enhanced MARC records, library media specialists are able to add standards, add grade level, specific language for their schools. Teachers will be able to search for materials that support their standards in their instruction, and it helps kids look for things that focus on the curriculum area that they're working on. But it also builds a relationship between the library media specialist and the teacher, because they are able to get the materials in the hands that they need. Next. Roger Minier from the Northwest Ohio Tech. He was responsible for developing the specific language. So there were just a few subfields that were developed, and I did notice today when I was doing my library visit that the Verona Library had added a 500 subfield as well to gear towards children, adolescent, or young adult in their catalog. So the 520 is a summary that includes a scope and sequence and a relationship to a specific instructional group. It uses that special curriculum language that you find in school, and the picture books use the language that is understood by a student. So it helps not only the teachers and the librarians, but the students as well. Next. The 521 was able to focus on the target audience, so you could add information about the age, grade level, lexile level, reading level. You can add your movie ratings here, and a description of the audience's characteristics, such as vision impairment or some other fields in the special ed, so that you can really pull the resources that you need for specific kids. The 526 field was the study program information. It's on reading management, such as accelerated reader, reading counts, any of those reading incentive kinds of programs. You can also link it to the specific tests that are available, and it can be really great for those schools that really focus on those kind of programs. This one is a field that I thought was really important. In a school setting, you do a lot of teaching with award-winning books. So the 586 field is for awards. You can put information on the books, the awards, and the dates, and then teachers and librarians can easily search for those books in the card catalog. The 653 index term is uncontrolled. This is where teacher librarians can incorporate language that is specific to their school. For example, at our school we have the PBIS program started in our school, and we have a lot of resources that we have accumulated in the library that are specific towards our school rules or our character ed programs. So here you can plug those in so that the teacher can then just go right to the catalog, or the student can go to the catalog and look for things that are going to support the instruction of our PBIS program. The 658 field, this is pretty important now with our Common Core language. This is where we can incorporate those curriculum standards or core standards and our course objectives. We could enter an objective, and I can see this being really helpful at the high school level. So in conclusion, just asking yourself, how or why would you use curriculum enhanced MARC records in your school? The librarian can use these records to increase access to teachers, make it easy for them to make connections with their curriculum. I think it would open up the doors to get more teachers inside the library using the resources that are available because they're easy for them to find. And it kind of takes away all that guesswork so that you can quickly find things that directly impact your classroom and your teaching.
Okay, my article was on how Novelist uses appeal factors to assist in Reader's Advisory. The article was named In the Eye of the Beholder, and it's by Laurel Cerulli and Victoria Kaplinger. They had heard from several experts that recommended classifying books by feeling rather than subject, or adjectively instead of nominally, so using terms like exciting, thought-provoking, and intricate, or fast-paced. So they started this in the spring of 2009. They formed a team, and their goal was to develop appeal vocabulary, basically that the users could relate to and help them pick out items that they're interested in. So they researched several conceptual models and based their model on those models. The authors of those models are listed here. And those authors also helped them in creating the Novelist model. So the 4 appeal factor categories they came up with were storyline. So basically it was a character, plot driven, and then other terms that would show what the overall structure was. Pace, so that the rate at which the story unfolds. One interesting thing here is they only marked if it's fast or slowly paced. They don't identify if it's medium paced because they found no one searches using saying I want a medium paced book. They either search I want a fast paced book or slow paced book. The third was tone, so that's the emotional core of the book, the setting, not geographical setting, and then the writing style, which included language and details. So once they decided on the categories, they had to decide on what terms they were going to use. So this is where controlled vocabulary comes into play. So they had to come up with that controlled vocabulary. So one of the quotes from the article is, appeal depends not only on the book itself, but upon a reader's response to it. So they had to find out what those readers' responses were to help them figure out the vocabulary. So they researched print and online resources. They looked at, readers' vocabulary, which included tagging, different reviews that were done, and they also solicit user feedback on the terms that are currently being used. So some of the challenges they had in coming up with these terms was that a word could have different meanings. There's different words that mean the same thing, and the same item could have different reviews. One review could be positive, but another could be negative. So they decided to use terms that were most clear to users, and they don't call out any negative words or reviews. Currently, they're working on additional appeal vocabulary that includes picture books and graphic novels and audiobooks. So here's a couple of quotes from the article. The big thing I think that they brought forth that it was important for catalogers to be flexible and accepting of new ways to do things. And it would be great to collaborate with other libraries so libraries can use a common vocabulary. And appeal factors add another dimension to help readers make a decision in selecting an item. Next slide. And then two possible options that a librarian could use to take advantage of the novelist, I guess, study and what they did was either connect novelists to your school library or OPAC, or add your own appeal factors to your records. I'm sure there's more options too, but those are two I came up with.
Well, I guess it's my turn. All right. My article focused on, well, it was written by Phyllis Robinson Snipes, and she focuses on that debate on whether or not the Dewey Decimal Classification System is justified at this time to continue its use, or if it's time to change out. Ooh, looks like we've lost our slideshow.
Sorry, I'm getting it back.
There.
We hit the 15 minutes on Screencast-O-Matic, so.
Oh, are we still recording then?
We are still recording because I have a backup through Google Air. So I'll go into presentation mode again. So Joe, feel free to keep talking.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So she raises a question: should we continue on with Dewey, or is it time to make changes? And she starts out by posing a number of questions that we should ask ourselves. And then she connected to some projects that are ongoing around the country. Next slide. And here are those questions. Are your patrons able to find the right book using the current system of organization? Is there value in keeping fiction titles in a separate section from information? Does organization by topic improve browsing for an increase in circulation? Will students be equipped to locate materials in all libraries if searching and browsing experience has been varied by school libraries? Other questions raised: should we continue keeping our fiction titles organized like they are, or should we start thinking in terms of putting them in their own special sections, kind of like how Dewey separates out? Let's see, next one. Next slide, please. And then here are some of the changes that we're starting to see. We see some people have genreified their fiction sections, but have left the nonfiction sections alone. They've left those classified under Dewey. Let's see. We see one school, the Lounsbury Hollow School, they've subject-based changed their nonfiction, but not their fiction. I thought that was interesting. And then we see the St. Vrain School using the bookstore model. And then we get down to the final example, the Ethical Cultural Field School, and that was with Sue Gifford that we were introduced to Wednesday night with her Metis system, where they genreified their entire collection in the elementary school. And you know, I thought that she raised some really interesting points, and it really got me questioning if it's time for me to consider making changes. I asked myself, are we simply focusing our kids to learn Dewey classification, or are we really providing them the right books? Are we helping them get to the right books? And as I was listening to her, it got me thinking, yeah, maybe I need to maybe not really redo my entire library, but start pulling out sections, examples from the different sections, and mixing nonfiction with fiction for a time together to give the kids an understanding of, well, this is how the library is laid out right now. Other libraries are laid out in this fashion. And it, hopefully, you know, I can get some of those underutilized sections more use. I think that was something I took away from the talk on Wednesday night. It's time to get aware of what sections are underutilized and get a better feel for what genres I need to improve on in the library, get a better handle of what we really have and what I need to expand on. The one blog that I recommend everyone to take a good look at, this Mrs. Reader Pants blog. This is continually getting updated, and it raises a lot of interesting questions on this whole genreification project and gives some really good examples of how this person's library is improving on signage and other projects to make these different sections jump out better to the user. I guess that's pretty much it for me.
Thanks, Joe. That's a nice lead-in to what I've got going on here. As you take a look at library organization, much of what we're talking about with cataloging won't help our patrons if we can't get them to just walk through the door. We know our students learn in many ways, so we know our patrons are also going to need to have the same ways in which they're going to go about browsing and reading in our libraries. When you look at the layout of our library, we expect to see the open spaces, the reading areas, and all of the books, but what is it that our patrons are actually seeing when they walk in? When I took a look at our library for the library study, all we see is our circulation desk, which is probably not the best thing to see as you walk into the library. You kind of need to see all the library information, and you want to see book displays and signs and public catalog systems so that you can know where you need to go to find what it is that you're looking for. We have to grab our patrons right away and get them excited about being there in the library. Next slide here. We have to make our books important. This is where the displays come in very handy, and they actually they really grab our patrons. We want to use themes and community events. We could use different polls from our catalog systems, what might be a current trend right now, or a current event in the media and such, to help get our patrons interested in not only the books, but what we have available to them in our library. The author shared that we couldn't have too much focus on the books and our library information. We need to make sure we have different groupings of things, different visual aids, and make them feel more comfortable about being there, which then will get them more comfortable using the different information and ways to get information within the library. Let's see. Include a few takeaways in the form of like a bookmark or a half sheet of paper so that our patrons can write things down as they're going through. One of my favorite things is when I can see a book list that I can kind of browse and if I like a certain author, they recommend another author to try. That's how I get a lot of my own reading for the summer and such, and I find that very helpful. When we take a look at displays, you definitely want to see something when you walk into the library. Right away, you want to see something that's going to catch your patron's eye, whether it is some community event that you're taking a look at, or if it's at a table and it has something to do with a local person who just got awarded a Hall of Fame, whatever it might be. You want to make sure that you have a number of different visuals to help bring that patron over to what it is that you're displaying and get them interested about finding more in the library. Lastly, you want to think about attracting the eye. I found it kind of funny. I found a picture that talked about I don't remember the name of the book, but I know it's blue, but taking all of the different colors within the library to get people stopping and seeing, well, jeepers, what is this blue book about? And it could be anything, as you know. But attracting the eye through lots of different signage, making sure you use color contrasts. I just listed a few examples there. Bringing in the different colored books and illumination of displays and sections. It can be pricey, but if you can make it work in the library, that's kind of a neat thing to have, because not all patrons are able to navigate the library comfortably. And one thing that this article ended on was the definite need for signage. As Joe had mentioned earlier, we want to make sure that we're getting our patrons throughout the library, not just stuck in one section. So that when you want to point out that cataloging procedure, whether you're using Dewey or another system, we want to make sure that we're catching all our patrons, whether we need to use bilingual signs, maybe Braille, depending upon the users within your library. The cataloging and organization of the library could be top-notch, but if patrons don't know where to go to use that cataloging system or how to go about finding the item once they've used it, it's all for naught. So we definitely want to make some changes to the atmosphere as needed, put up some signs and displays, make sure that everything is eye-catching and able to help patrons find what they are looking for. And then we want to make sure that we make it important and relate it to our patrons.
Okay, so that was all of our different parts of our research project, and pretty much what we concluded as ways to increase patron independence. I looked at opening up catalogs, using more internal and external data both together, and ferberizing data so users can find what they need efficiently.
And I looked at how you can enhance your MARC record to adapt to your curriculum so that teachers and librarians can find and fit needs for the classroom.
And I looked at the Novelist article about how they used appeal factors and how we could take advantage of that.
I looked at a variety of questions that we need to ask ourselves if we're meeting our users' needs, and if we're not, what changes we should be considering, whether it's genreification with your nonfiction, fiction, or both.
And I looked at what we can learn from other libraries and even some bookstores to get our users to browse and find what they're looking for effectively and independently.
And here's our bibliography of the various research articles we used. I will post all this onto the discussion boards so the different groups can all see what we did. All right. And that's everything, you guys.
Yay! Thank you.